All right. Good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock on the dot, and we've got all of our special guests joining us tonight. Jonesy has just joined at the last minute, as usual. Matt Jones from the site chat. I'll do a little bit of a run around and introduce everybody. Actually, you know what I might do? I'll give you guys 30 seconds, 60 seconds to do a quick intro of yourself, a little bit of your background and how you fit into the picture with this discussion today, whilst I get the Facebook live stream happening. That might be the way to go. So I'll get, Jonesy, seeing you were late, mate, you can go first.
No worries. Matt Jones. I run a digital agency called Tradie Web Guys, and we basically build websites and deliver marketing products for trade-based businesses specifically. And I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the observations, I suppose, that our clients have seen in this climate, which I'll give you a heads up. It's not all doom and gloom. So I'm like the optimist in the group, I'm sure, although Rob's trying to take that flag off me, I hear, but we'll see what we can do. But I also run a podcast, so we get to speak with hundreds of business owners from all over the planet, and we get some pretty good feedback within our community as to what's happening, not just in the Australian market, but in global markets. And so it's certainly affecting everyone. We're not alone.
It really is a bit of a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the construction industry, I'd say, Jonesy.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. All right, very good. Thank you. Maybe over to Ed. You want to give us a bit of an intro, Ed?
Hi guys, my name's Ed Mallett. I'm the managing director and I founded a company called Employsure about 10 years ago now. Now Employsure does workplace relations advice and safety advice to small businesses across Australia and New Zealand. That includes a lot of tradies. Our largest industry group by some distance is construction businesses, and we're proud to count TradiePad as amongst our clients. We're very busy at the moment trying to advise small businesses through the mess that is. And I'm hoping I might be able to give some insights into the kind of questions that you should be asking about employing people at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. I'm just madly beavering away in the background here because the Facebook live stream doesn't want to kick off. So I'm just restarting Google Chrome and ticking away at all the technology stuff in the background. So don't mind me.
Happened to me the other day, mate.
Love it. I love live.
If you need me to fill in time, let me know. I don't mind talking.
Can you dance, Jonesy? Thank you, Ed. I'll hand over to Rob now. Quick intro from Rob.
Yeah, my name's Rob and I own a company called Pravar Group, and we specialise helping trades and construction businesses. They're our sole client base. We're very good at, my team and I are very good at helping those businesses structure their business in a way that really helps them unlock growth and time and profits, and more importantly, help their business give them the life to be able to help them reconnect with their families. So family is very near and dear to our values here at Pravar Group. Today I'm going to talk a fair bit about how do we navigate over the next few weeks, but more importantly, how we can balance that with having a bit more of a long-term view, and definitely still got a bit of an optimist approach, just like Jonesy does. But I want to talk a bit about how we can navigate through these next few weeks and minimise losses, but really have our business geared correctly to be able to capitalise out on the back end.
Yeah, it's this situation is what we make of it, isn't it, Rob?
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Angus, out in the middle of nowhere, pushing the social distancing to the absolute limit.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you, Clinton. So my name is Angus Capel. I work for Xero. I'm Xero's small business advocate. Basically, what my job is with Xero is to make sure that the information that's generated across Xero's 800,000 odd subscribers in Australia is communicated back to government so that they can make the best decisions that they can on behalf of the small business sector. So a little bit about my background. I actually came to Xero after working in the government. I was working for a couple of small business ministers helping them with their small business policy work. So have had the pleasure of working with TradiePad actually through the Digital Champions project, which is a project where there's 100 businesses actually that are going on a digital journey. So it's been fantastic to have a commercial plumber as one of my businesses under my wing. But to have the help of TradiePad, really bring them up to speed in the digital economy has been fantastic. So really excited to have a chat about just what the government is doing, what their strategy is to help small businesses, and where we can sort of take it from here once we bottom out and start to get back on that upswing.
Looking forward to that one, I can tell you, Angus. Thank you very much, mate. And Angus is out in the middle of nowhere because he's getting a little bit of essential travel done before the lockdown happens, which is probably a good segue to have a little bit of a talk about the current position of things and the current situation, because I know there's a lot of questions about that. So I'll talk about that in a second.
We live, mate?
We are preparing to go live. We're recording this, so I'm going to upload it to Facebook, and we've got a lot of attendees tonight. So I want to get into it rather than waste any more time. I'll just give the live stream one more go. I've just done a Chrome restart, cleared all the browsing history, and we'll see if it works this time.
It happened to me the other day.
Yeah.
In a recording.
And what was the issue?
I don't know. I ended up having uploaded to Facebook as a recording.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll get into it. It's I've cleared all my browsing history now. It's asking me to log in with my Facebook details and my code generator and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, that's all good. So what we're going to do now, I'll just start with a little bit of housekeeping for everybody that's attending. We have, this is very much an interactive discussion, an interactive webinar. I want this to be information for all of the attendees. You know, I know there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of grey areas that are out there. So this is very much an interactive discussion. So please use the Q&A tool that you'll see either down the bottom of your screen or up the top of your screen, depending on whether you're joining on a mobile device or you are on a laptop or a desktop. So the Q&A tool is going to be monitored by me throughout the discussion. So please use that if you have any questions. We've had a couple of questions sent through via email before the webinar as well. So I've got that on the list. I've got those questions on the list to ask. But please use the Q&A tool for any queries that you have, and we'll be answering those questions as we go through. So if it's relevant to the discussion, I'll bring it into the discussion then. If it's something that can wait till the end, we'll be doing a bit of Q&A at the end as well. But we've got a lot of stuff to get through, so conscious of time. And anything that's not answered, we will take offline as well, and we'll answer offline. And if the need arises, we can even look at doing some dedicated webinars on specific subjects if we haven't got the time to get through it all, because we've got the knowledge of some really good specialists here. And yeah, it's all about sharing the knowledge as far as I'm concerned at the moment. So I mentioned before a little bit of a bit of an update on the current situation. What started this webinar, I guess, was what we put together, what TradiePad put together on our website, which was the Tradie Survival Pack. So we saw that there was a lot of information that was being put out there, and it was hard to see the forest for the trees, to use a term. So we put together a bunch of the information that we'd found that was out there specifically for the trades and construction sector. And there's a lot of queries around the stimulus packages and how all of that's going to affect the industry. We've been talking a little bit about the fact that we're potentially going into lockdown. It's not confirmed, but it's very, very likely. I thought it would be relevant to have a look at where New Zealand is currently sitting, because it appears that New Zealand's slightly ahead of where we're up to. New Zealand's gone into lockdown already. So on the building.gov.nz website, on their COVID-19 webpage, there's a lot of information there about what the lockdown means for the building and construction sector. So what level 4 lockdown means. So this is a great resource. And this is, I guess, a bit of an indicator of what could happen to the construction industry if we go into lockdown. I guess the most important part, or the most relevant piece in there, was there's a question that asks, what can I do as a trade person under this situation? And it says under a level 4 alert, only tradespeople undertaking work related to essential business or infrastructure are expected to be working outside of the self-isolation protocol. The exception to this may be where tradespeople are required to undertake emergency work where the need is immediate and required to maintain human health and safety. So that's on this webpage down here under this first question, and there's a lot of really good information here. So we'll be putting together a list of all of these links that we'll send out to everybody, all of the attendees once we're finished up, and I'll also be putting some links into the chat box as we're going through tonight as well. So I'll put the links into the chat box, which you'll be able to access. So I guess that's a little bit of a current kind of situation. We don't know whether lockdown or when lockdown is going to happen, but I do feel as though it's inevitable. We'll start with some discussion with Angus. I'll hand over to Angus to have a little bit of a talk about Xero's position in all of this. We've had a couple of questions about Xero, which we'll address at the end, but do you think you could give us a little bit of insight into what Xero's position is with this, Angus, and also, I guess, the importance of using a trusted advisor in a situation like this, a bookkeeper or an accountant?
Yeah, sure. So sorry, there's a bit of a fly plague out here, as I was mentioning before. So I'll just keep swatting these away. But sorry if this is a bit distracting. But you know, from Xero's perspective, you know, we're watching this flow through, and it's just quite devastating from our end to see how quickly it's having an impact on small businesses. So from our perspective, you know, we're doing what we can at the first pass just to make sure, just as you are, Clinton, you know, we're making sure that our subscribers in Australia have access to the information that they need. As I'm sure that we've seen, you know, there's a ton of information that is being communicated out from government and all different areas of government as well. You know, it's coming out of individual agencies such as the ATO, but also, you know, from federally and then coming from states. So we're just trying to make sure from the very first step that our businesses have the confidence to actually go to a central place and make sure the information that they're getting is appropriate. So behind the scenes, you know, we're working with government there as well, making sure that we're communicating with government what we're seeing from our 800,000 or so subscribers in Australia, and making sure that when they are thinking about putting together these big stimulus plans, that they have access to the best insights from the small business sector in real time. So moving on to the advisors, you know, there is a lot of assistance floating around from government, but from a whole heap of other places as well, you know, right across corporate Australia. There's people that are really digging deep to make sure that businesses can have the best chance of holding on through this time. So our advice there is that it's never been more important to really work closely with your advisor, so that you can get the information, firstly, to make sure that you are accessing what you're entitled to, but also that you're getting the information, you know, and that you're preparing yourself for what is facing your business firstly, but your industry, and you can plan out into the future to give yourself the best chance of survival.
Awesome, thank you, Angus. I've finally got the go live happening on Facebook. only took the first 5-10 minutes, but that's awesome, Angus. The reason I guess I brought you into the discussion was because a lot of our clients use Xero, and a lot of small businesses rely on Xero, and I guess it's what we would call an essential tool these days. And the stimulus packages that have been announced are very much focused on information or the data that is being submitted to the ATO around IAS and PAYG submissions and also BAS. So I guess Xero is a really important part for those businesses that are using it to make sure that the data that's being submitted is up to date, and that people are getting access to this, to as much of this stimulus package as possible. From a bookkeeper or from a business owner's perspective that maybe is using Xero themselves and isn't relying on a bookkeeper or an accountant, now is maybe really good time to get in touch with a trusted advisor that can help you with that. Because if if you don't submit the right information at the end of this month, the end of this quarter, then that's severely going to limit your access to the stimulus that's available. Have you got anything you can mention about that, Angus?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first thing to mention, and we sort of see this through, sorry, let that truck go by. We see this through the agriculture, and when they're doing it tough in droughts all the time. Like this isn't charity from the government. This is the government providing resources into the sector so that the sector can support the whole economy. So first things first, you don't need to feel bad or that you're getting a handout from government. This is the best way that they can be spending money, is injecting it into these sectors. So it's really, really important that businesses go out and actually take advantage of it, because this is what's going to maintain employment and make sure that we can recover as quickly as we can once we start to improve. But as you say, being really connected with your advisor, there might be an opportunity here where there is some excess capacity to start working out whether your advisor is, in sync with what your expectations are as a small business, and maybe an opportunity to have a look around. If there's someone that you think would fit your business better, get out and have a look. But it is absolutely critical that the information is up to date, because as you say, Clinton, it's through the existing mechanisms so that the payments can go out as fast as possible, but they need to be up to date. So making sure that you're working with your advisor and that they know exactly where you're at in your business, and that you're submitting the information which is going to get you in contact with these resources from government, it is just hugely, hugely important.
Absolutely. Now's the time to have all your information up to date. So I thought maybe it's a good time to have a bit of a look at the ATO website that has this information. This is, I guess, the thing that really clarified how all of this worked for me, because there's some good examples on the ATO website about how this is going to work. So this is the boosting cash flow for employees page, and there's information in there about eligibility and how that works. But the examples down here go through it's all based on your PAYG withholding. So it's important to understand whether you're submitting your BAS quarterly and or more importantly, your installment activity statement, so your IAS. It's very much dependent on whether you submit your IAS monthly or you submit your IAS quarterly as to how it will get calculated. And the amount of PAYG that you withhold from your employees will govern how much of a stimulus you get from this particular package. So for businesses that withhold less than $10,000 for the month of March, then you sit underneath this threshold where you'll get a maximum of $20,000. If you withhold more than $10,000 per month, then you're entitled to $50,000 per quarter and a total of $100,000. So have a good look at these examples. You need to understand what your PAYG withholding amount is to understand whether you fall into this example or this example. But this explains some examples of the dollar figure amounts and what the cash flow boost is going to be. Now, the important thing to understand, excuse me, is that this is not a cash handout. This is going to go against your BAS or your IAS submissions. So they're not just going to cut you a check. This is going to be a credit against your BAS submission or your IAS submission. So it's really important that you communicate with your advisor, your bookkeeper or your accountant to understand a lot of this stuff, and make sure that the data that you have in your accounting package, your accounting system, is up to date, and you're getting the maximum possible stimulus available to you. So again, talk to your bookkeeper or accountant to get an understanding of that.
Can I just ask a quick question? I just tried doing the Q&A, realised I'm a panelist and I can't ask questions. I've had a couple of clients actually, and a few people in our community, and this is a question, I suppose, for primarily Angus, but possibly even you, Rob, and maybe Clinton. One of them is in a business partnership, so they're not a proprietary limited company, and the other one is a sole trader. And they were wondering what if they're entitled to any of the stimulus packages.
I can't answer that question straight off the top of my head. Sorry, go Angus.
I can answer a part of it probably. Not so sure about the partnership side of it, but the sole traders do have a bit of assistance there as well. So what has been extended to them is if they take a significant hit to their revenue, there's going to be an easy pathway into basically social security, which has been doubled from the normal rate. So it's going to be really easy for them to apply for it, but they're also going to be able to be having some income from their business as well, which is a bit of a shift from what is usually the case for accessing that kind of support. So I think that you're going to be able to be making up to about $1,000 a fortnight from business activity and have that subsidised by around another $1,000 from the government support.
Okay, does that help answer the question, Jonesy?
Yeah, I think everyone's sort of in a bit of the grey about the partnership arrangement.
Yeah.
I'm a bit reluctant to answer it there, Jonesy. I think it's really important that everyone talks to their accountant or their trusted advisor, because a lot of the stuff can be general advice in nature, but I think accountants and bookkeepers have their finger on the pulse of exactly what the specific scenario is for those partnerships or sole traders. So I think if anyone is questioning what do they do or what's my specific situation, it's about reading this information as general, but then it's important they go straight to their advisor and say, what is it that's for me, and what's my structure, and what is my scenario, what's my best possible chance of getting the maximum benefits or handouts that I can, and the accountants will be best positioned to be able to do that for sure.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably par for the course for everything we're talking about, so speak to your trusted advisor. But I thought maybe like what we're talking about seems to blanket a lot of the proprietary limited setup organisations, and I wasn't sure if anyone had any insight as to whether or not it also covers sole traders and partnerships and other sort of setups. But anyway, that's fine.
Cool, thank you. So last thing from you, if we can please, Angus, what's Xero doing to support small businesses? We had a question earlier today through our Facebook page about Xero's been, I guess, fairly quiet with all of this around supporting small businesses. So is there anything that Xero can do to help their swag of small businesses that use their product in terms of assistance or anything like that?
Yeah. So when we're talking about direct assistance, and so this is sort of a bit more finer detail than providing information and sort of that sort of stuff and providing information to small businesses themselves, we are setting up a case-by-case kind of basis support area. So it's going to be sitting on Xero Central. So if anybody is out there and they're struggling, please do get in contact with us because we're really keen to have a chat with you and see what we can do to help. But that expands right out across the corporate and government sector. Like if it's the same with the banks. If you're having trouble repaying your loans, just get on the phone to them, have a chat with them and see what they can do for you. But also the government, the ATO is there to help as well. So everybody from Xero and the private sector right across government is seeing how much stress is being placed on the small business sector at the moment. So just get on the phone to us, hit us up through Xero Central, and we'll do what we can to help.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm just going to put I've been putting a couple of posts into the chat as we're going along. First one was the New Zealand government website around construction. And we've got the ATO boosting cash flow. And I'm also just putting in the link for the Xero web page that's been set up specifically to support the users and provide a little bit of information. And that's got the link to Xero Central that Angus mentioned there. So that's awesome. Thank you, Angus. I think we might have gotten in just in time before the sun goes down behind you, mate.
it's actually pretty nice out here, and this is one of the joys of cloud working. You know, I'm picking up tools so that I can be talking with you guys right now, even though I'm in sort of the middle of nowhere. So yeah, it works well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank goodness you got a connection. Okay, couple of questions there. Someone's mentioning that there's internet issues dropping in and out. Have you guys noticed any issues as we've been going through? Is that everything coming through okay? Yeah, all good. Okay, awesome. Jonesy, it's getting pretty dark there for you, mate. You look like you're in a basement.
Mate, I'm on the balcony and I've just messaged the missus to bring me another beer. And I've got the little light set up, so I'm hoping I'm...
Yeah, it's not too bad. Awesome. All right, so we'll move on. So we'll hand over to Ed now. Ed's been very, very busy this week running a series of Facebook Live webinars and getting absolutely bombarded with questions in these Facebook Live webinars. So there's a lot of questions around employer obligations and the whole situation. So what are you seeing out there, Ed, especially for the construction industry? What kind of insight can you give us?
The way we've been, I suppose, structuring what we're seeing is that we've said that we're sort of seeing 4 stages of change in what's going on, and different people, and this is true to construction as it is other industries. The first stage of what we're seeing is what we've been calling stage 0, which is basically people denying that this is happening. And I think we've probably all been there. I certainly, it was probably only 10 days ago now, it feels like a lifetime ago, was out shaking hands with people and saying, oh, this will all blow over and the illness isn't that bad anyway, and all that sort of stuff. And I was sort of missing the point in that, my job as a business owner was to not worry about whether the medical consequences or whatever they are, but was to manage the risk in my business. And I sort of woke up, the penny dropped, as I say, about 10 days ago. That led me into the second group, where we're seeing a lot of our clients at the moment, including tradies, including construction businesses, which is they're in stage 1 crisis management, we're calling it. And what that means is a bit like I'm doing here to the right of me here. I'm still clicking on the SMH to refresh every now and then and saying, what's going on? Is something changing that affects me, my business, my family, and trying to go through that. What does that mean for me as an employer is what I'm obviously particularly focused on. So that's stage 1. Stage 2, where people are starting to move into, is slightly more reasoned planning. We're calling it the planning stage. And we hope it's more reasoned. It's not, it's people looking at their cash flows, saying, what's going to happen? What's the worst case scenario? And you mentioned earlier, Clinton, about making sure you're planning for the worst. All planning, I think, should be done for the worst, but hoping for the best. So we're starting to get more and more calls from people that are looking at, can I stand down my staff? What are the rules around that? What are my alternatives if I can't stand them down? How much is redundancy going to cost me? Are the government incentives big enough to stop me having to make those decisions? Those sorts of questions. And then the final stage that we're obviously talking about just a few minutes ago before we went live is the third stage, which we're calling opportunity. And that's businesses. And there are some out there who are kind of making the most of what's going on, and they're seeing opportunities. Maybe they're changing their business model slightly to take on particular new lines of business that look like they're going to be open longer than others. Maybe it's starting to think about your business planning for once we get through this, and we will get through it, absolutely no doubt about that, when none of us know, but we will get through it, and people are needing to think about how they're employing their people, how they're looking after their staff, pending that. So those are the 4 stages. If I'm honest, most people we're seeing at the moment are still in crisis management, but the group of people planning is starting to fill up.
Right. Okay, that's good. It's progressing.
Yes.
You mentioned there standing down and redundancy. And I know there's been a lot of questions, and you've probably answered this question 100 times over the last few days. But for those that aren't aware of it, like it was the whole standing down concept was new to me before the start of this week.
Yep.
And so I think it'd be beneficial if you can explain what standing down means versus a redundancy or versus letting somebody go, and I guess the benefits or the situation that would apply for those.
Spot on. Yeah. It's standing down was not something a lot of people knew much about until 10 days ago. It's quite a sort of niche area of the relevant law in this area, which is something that most people have heard of, I think, called the Fair Work Act. And what it is a provision that says if there has been a stoppage of work, and I emphasize the word stoppage, for reasons that are outside the reasonable control of the employer, then you can do something called stand down. And standing down someone is where you choose. There's no agreement with you and the employee. You are saying, I am going to put you out of work. You're still employed by me, but I'm not going to pay you. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing that you can unilaterally do that is that that's the unique thing about stand down. You don't need your employees to agree with it. You have a situation where you can tell them that they're going to essentially be put on unpaid leave. If I had some way, there's probably some snazzy button I could press here that I don't know how to use, but if I could write health warning across the screen right now, I would. It's probably a bit inappropriate to use that phrase, but the warning that I'd give everyone on that is stand down is being used as language really loosely in the media, even by the government, to be honest. It's got a very narrow definition, and it doesn't mean that if business is slowing down, business isn't going so well, my projections, my budgeting is changing, I'm forecasting that I'm going to have a slower quarter, year, whatever it might be, I therefore want to reduce my wage bill. You cannot unilaterally just say, there we go, you're out, you're on unpaid leave, that's my decision. Now, a number of tradies might be familiar with stand down through things like inclement weather provisions. It's a similar thing to that. It's where something has happened that's outside your control that stops you from being able to work. And then you get to say to someone, you're on unpaid leave, and off you go. So that, for construction, particularly at the moment, that's not yet available. And the reason it's not yet available is because we haven't had a shutdown of that industry. You can carry on working. Building sites across the country, big and small, are continuing. How long, as you pointed out, Clinton, that goes on for, I don't know. So there's a bit of a dance here. You've got to work out. You don't want to wait so long that your business is getting damaged if, for example, you're seeing an immediate slowdown even before a shutdown. But equally, you don't want to jump the gun if the government is going to do a shutdown of the construction industry and stand down becomes available. That's a very useful tool for you in managing staff costs. So stand down's one thing. The next possibility is if we don't have a broader based lockdown which stops the construction industry from working and opens up stand down, you've got a handful of options that you need to work through if you need to manage your staff costs. One of them might be putting people on unpaid leave. I stress that this is for permanent employees. This is not for casuals, true casual staff who are getting paid by the hour. In the case of a casual, you're just starting to look at whether you're stopping or reducing their number of shifts. In the case of permanent staff, what you would be doing is offering them or asking them to go on unpaid leave, and they may or may not agree to that. And I'll come back to what happens if they don't. You might look at reducing their hours. That would also have to be by agreement. And look, if you're paying people over award rates, you could potentially get their agreement to take a lower wage for a period. What people will be doing undoubtedly in the trades will be looking at which of my employees are very, very important to me and I cannot afford to set off into the job market because I might never get them back. Who's got particular skill sets I know are bloody hard to come by if I go out into the job market. And who is more dispensable, being totally blunt about it. So those are the kind of options you'd be looking at if there's not an opportunity to do a stand down. Last and definitely least is redundancy for permanent employees. And I say that because redundancy comes at a cost. You have to pay redundancy pay, which may well be an amount of money equal to the amount of pay that you'd have to pay someone just to wait this out. So you end up, let's say you've had someone working for you for a few years, you end up having to pay them 10 weeks redundancy, and then in 8 weeks' time, we're all back at work. It just doesn't seem to me that redundancy is a great tool at the moment. You've got to be really careful with it and not be rushing to cut your costs. And in doing so, create this extra burden of having to pay employment entitlements out. I should just add on that on some of the incentives coming out of the government, the one particularly about PAYG through your BAS, you're not going to get that if you don't have people on your payroll. So if you stood them down or you've put them on agreed unpaid leave, they're not going to be featuring on your BAS statement, so you're not going to get the benefit of that incentive. So be very careful in balancing the cost and benefit of these things.
That's a really, really important point, that it's based on continuing to employ people. So it's not just the current position, but it's an incentive or a stimulus to retain employment, so to keep the employment going. So yeah, very important point. I guess a lot of this is very dependent upon what happens over the next couple of weeks with lockdown and what happens with the construction industry as to what decision you make. But I think what you've highlighted here is that it's a bit of a slippery slope, or there's a lot of components that go into making the decision. And just like we spoke about with getting advice about the stimulus package and from your trusted advisor, it's really important to get the right advice about how to handle this situation, because I think, as you were saying earlier today, we don't want to end up in a position where you make the wrong decisions now, and then those decisions come back to haunt you when things do do turn around. Yeah,
spot on. And just emphasising with that warning with the stand down, the way that would look is if you stood people down when you weren't allowed to, and then in 6 months' time, 3 months' time, you're back up and running, and they read and find out somewhere that you weren't allowed to do that, and they've just spent the last few months on New Start. They could look at turning around and suing you for the wages you should have been paying them when you unilaterally stood them down. Last thing we want is, when you're trying to get back up on your feet, is to be dealing with employment law claims. So yeah, be very careful of the stand down stuff. I think, and also just on the planning side of it, I can say from internally here today, just before this, I was in a meeting starting to look at what we're going to do in terms of our cost saving. And look, there are people that are going to speak later on who are more expert maybe than me on this. But what we're starting to do, given that staff costs are going to be most of our, as business owners and managers, our biggest cost, we're looking at what we can cut out first before we go to that, trimming down any extra benefits that are not salary. That we are going to stop projects, stop any additional costs that we can contractually get out of, or haven't started yet. And then we'll start to consider staff costs if we need to, once it's a bit clearer what's going to happen. But the point of that, I suppose, is that we're not rushing to make decisions on staff just yet. And I'd urge other people to. You can see the New Start queues. My belief is that they're mainly fueled by hospitality, maybe some retail, particularly casual workers. And you haven't yet seen the permanent wave of people going into those queues.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question here. I'm conscious of time because we've got so much to get through. But a question: can employees request voluntary redundancy if an employer asks for stand down?
They can request it, and you could look at it. So again, my health warning: you wouldn't ask for stand down. If it's a true stand down, you would just stand someone down. You might ask them to take unpaid leave, and if the employee turned around and said, "Can I take voluntary redundancy?" you could consider it. You've got no obligation to do it. But if that's their way of saying, no, I'm not going on unpaid leave, then you might end up having to consider redundancy, because you've got to make the cost savings somehow.
Okay, and that answers the next question, was what happens if they don't agree to leave without pay?
There are other options. It's not just leave without pay. What you're trying to do is get everyone to be a bit of a team player here. Easier said than done. but asking them to share the pain and saying, look, this is all in our bigger interest. You've seen quite a few industries, you might have seen in the newspaper, say the hotel industry managed to get an agreement to be able to lower hours under their award. Be interesting to see whether construction manages to do something the same so that you can reduce hours a bit more easily.
Awesome. I think one comment I'll make there is I read something really powerful recently around in situations like this, when we're in a crisis, when we're in facing a situation that's affecting the entire business, the best thing we can do is communicate.
Yep.
So like you said there, Ed, communicating to everybody about what's going on and asking people to be part of the team and to be a team player and to do their part in making sure that the business survives, I think is so important. A lot of people, I think, just stick their head in the sand and go, well, maybe it'll go away. I'll pull my head out later and see what happens. But I think communication is absolutely critical with this, because you'd be surprised with what people will do to support the business, because they know if you wind up, if your business goes down the gurgler, they've got no job. So, you know, it's in everybody's best interest that everyone works together. It just comes back to communication.
Spot on.
Thank you, Ed. One last thing. I know you mentioned, you've been mentioning over the last couple of days around this, around the spring concept of getting the business ready for when we return to normal, getting ready to bounce back. So any quick comments on that, because it'll lead into some discussions later on.
I feel like I've nicked this idea from somewhere. I ought to probably attribute it, but I don't know where I nicked it from. I've got to go and look it up. I know there's a word for the springiness of a spring, and I can't pronounce it, so I won't try. But basically what I've been saying to our clients is, guys, don't forget about stage 3, the opportunity, because if all you're doing is preparing for the worst, you're not thinking about the future at all, you won't bounce back. Think of yourself like a spring under pressure at the moment, pushing down, and there's a heck of a lot of pressure for all of us, and we're going through this. But don't make sure that you're the spring, because there will be opportunity and you will need to bounce back. And the guys that do really well off the back of this will be those that are starting to forward think about what they can do. That might be securing talent that might otherwise have been hard to get. It might be diverting your energies into different projects, different trades potentially, if you can, and diverting your business into those to try and make the most out of opportunities that will arise.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a good segue. We'll hand over to Rob, because Rob, we were just talking about this, exactly this earlier, about preparing for the turnaround and making sure that you're maximising the opportunities. I know we were going to hand over to Jonesy to talk next, but this is the perfect segue for you, Rob, because I think a really good thing that Ed mentioned there was around securing talent that comes onto the market. That is very realistic, that people, you know, potentially may get let go and may be available. So there's no doubt about it. There's been a massive shortage of good talent in the industry. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm finding it so hard to get people." So if you're in a position to secure someone that is good talent, it's a good opportunity, but you don't want to overcommit. It's so important that you know your numbers and you're making decisions confidently based on knowing that you're in a position to be able to put somebody on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a real delicate balancing act, because like Ed was talking there, it's like some people are in crisis, some people are planning, some people are starting to see opportunities, but it's a delicate balancing act between navigating through what's ahead of us in the next 2 to 4 weeks, because there's talks about potential shutdowns and lockdowns, and what does that mean? And I think that's where the uncertainty lies. So it's important to balance that survival mentality that a lot of people have, but it's that ability to plan through that surviving, but being able to see past that and see, well, how can I structure my business? And we're talking to a lot of our clients around the shock absorbers. It's the ability to compress right down, take the hit and weather the storm, and be prepared for that and plan accordingly. Because where a lot of stress comes for business owners is there's uncertainty. They don't have a battle plan in place around how they're going to compress. And that's where a lot of the stress from a lot of business people are coming from at the moment. So I think it's a lot of people in the trades and construction I'm talking to, some are completely blasé around what's really going on because it just hasn't affected them, and others are really starting to hurt it. So, and we're seeing this across all of Australia, because I speak to business owners all around Australia. So I think over the next little while, it's important that first thing most people need to do is plan. They need to be able to plan to compress and have a strategy in place to be able to have the shock absorber take the hit, but then it's being able to have their business structured accordingly so that as we bounce back, because we're going to bounce back, and I think we need to have that opportunistic mindset about us, is maintenance still needs to get done, buildings are going to go ahead, construction sites are still need to get moved forward, and those projects are going to go online. I think we need to be prepared to be able to capitalize on those opportunities, but not run out of working capital and cash flow in the meantime, where we don't have the ability to bounce back out the back end.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. So just on that point of knowing the numbers, we spoke about it with Angus earlier about making sure that your information that's in your accounting package is up to date from a stimulus and a support perspective. But I think it really highlights and could potentially be catching people out about not having this clarity on where the business position, what the business position is, and whether or not that they can forecast forward about what's going to happen. So I hate to say it, but maybe it's situations like this that force people into realizing that this stuff is actually really important, and being able to make those forecasts and make those projections on what are the trigger points that are going to have to, or that I need to be aware of, that I've got to start making some tough decisions. So numbers are critical in business these days.
They are, and unfortunately, we've come off the wave of the high tide effect, where a lot of business people have just come so well because we've been in buoyant times. The business owners who don't know their numbers are unfortunately going to be the people who hurt the most. And because when you speak to a lot of people, they measure the success of their business by how much money they've got in their bank. And they see their accountant at the end of the year and they say, that was great, and you made this much profit, and the owner's left wondering, well, where is that money? And by the way, here's your tax bill. So understanding the key metrics in the business by having visibility on pipeline is absolutely essential in not only the maintenance, but the project space. It's the ability to have visibility. Where is my pipeline going, and what's my current run rate at the moment, and understanding break-even points within the business so that you can measure your run rate against your break-even point. So if you are starting to see a decline in your run rate and your pipeline, you've got that information or data at hand through live reporting to be able to understand and be educated on when you might need to stand people down or stand team members down, like Ed was talking about before. So the conversation we're having with our clients at the moment is we've got to have an urgency about pipeline, but be careful of false economies around pipeline as well, because for some of the guys in the project space, the pipeline that you've got at the moment with contracts locked in could be the work that you've done 3 or 6 months ago. And you might be thinking that it's all well and good, things are great, and the pipeline's looking healthy. But the work that's coming in front of you over the next 3 to 6 months is a reflection of the work you do today and the sales you make today. So having that key reporting in place in terms of pipeline is so essential. So it not only helps you understand where the trajectory of your business is going, but it also helps you make decisions on where you need to start shrinking down in the instance that you need to compress with the shock absorber.
Mm. Yeah, awesome. And we were talking before about the 3 Ps and that pipeline being the first piece. And you mentioned about people kind of banking on that work that they'd secured 3 or 6 months ago, but that could very easily get pulled out from underneath them. So I think being able to pivot, another P that we hadn't spoken about, but being able to pivot and maybe look at other areas of work or other opportunities, I think is important. What are the other P's that we spoke about?
Yeah, with pivoters, it sounds funny in the business world, but you've got to go where the money is. And a prime example of this is one of our electrical clients. He does a lot of fit out work in the in the hospitality space. And that's what I was saying before, is he's sitting great now because he's got contracts live now where CapEx expenditure was approved back months ago. And the false economy for him is thinking that it's good now, but it's not going to be in a good couple of months' time. So for him, he needs to be able to still stay within his lane and stick to his knitting, which is in what he's good at, is electrical space in the commercial area. There's no point him thinking about going into domestic markets because his business isn't geared accordingly to get into those markets. So this is where you've got to, within your business, you've got to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, what lane you actually swim in, what market you actually play in, and then start taking a step back to be able to think, well, if I'm normally in fit out market in the hospitality space and they're not going to be spending money in 3 to 6 months' time, where do I need to start navigating my business to be able to start moving with where those opportunities are within the marketplace? So it's absolutely essential that business owners not just think in the here and now, but where do they start moving their business and pointing that in the right direction to be able to capitalize in the coming months.
Yeah, it's all about the planning. And the last P that we spoke about was profit. Ed touched on it before about looking at areas within the business that you can cut costs, you can trim expenses and that kind of thing. What's the plan there? What are you saying to people?
It's important to be able to, the two great ways is obviously be able to jump in Xero and run your P&L and just see what non-discretionary spending that you've got within the business. Also look at that within your personal life as well, just to be able to see where you can cut non-essential spending in your personal life and your business, so you can start winding back that overhead that you've got in your business to be able to reserve your working capital. So trimming expenses where essential is important. But for a lot of trades and construction bases, businesses, a lot of their cost is labor. And so it's so important at the moment to be able to measure and manage productivity of your team members is more important now than ever, because you need to be able to have your finger on the pulse to be able to extract as much productivity out of your team as you can, especially your billable workforce, because the moment that productivity starts dropping, that's where you're going to be labor stacking jobs or having guys cleaning vans or the workshop or whatever it is. But that's where you need to start thinking about what Ed was talking about, is if you're seeing your revenue drop, you've got to definitely drop your cost base accordingly to preserve as much profit as you can, so you don't erode your working capital going forward.
So it's knowing what those, I said it before, knowing those trigger points on being able to make those tough decisions. And I think as business owners, the decisions that we don't like making, but it's all about preservation of the business so that we've got something that comes out the other side. So tough decisions are what we have to do as business owners. So making those decisions based on statistics and numbers, I think makes it a little bit easier.
Definitely. And I think another tool that everyone should be doing if they haven't got done so already, and I won't go into the mechanics of it, is cash flow forecasting. Now, I don't, as most business owners in the trades and construction space understand, is just because you show a profit on your P&L doesn't mean that cash shows up in your bank account at that time, generally because of payment terms or whatever it is. But it's more important now than ever. If everyone on this webinar doesn't have a cash flow forecast, you need one. Now, I know it doesn't fix your cash flow problems, but it gives you visibility over the next 1 to 3 to 4 to 8 weeks around what is your cash flow position doing. And then you've got the ability to massage your debtors to be able to keep on top of them, but communicate to your creditors, because the last thing you want to do is, like you said about communication before, is you don't want to go to ground and not communicate to your creditors or your team. A cash flow forecast is a great way on a weekly basis to be able to see the ins and outs of the cash flow of your business and to be able to manage that accordingly, so you can really make smart decisions rather than shoot from the hip, which is what a lot of people do, unfortunately.
Yeah. And again, I think it just highlights, I think cash flow forecasting is a bit of a scary word for people that don't have it and haven't done it and don't understand it. So again, it highlights how important it is to have an advisor that you work with within your business. It's all about building that network of the team that works with you to help you within your business. So it really highlights the importance of having someone that you can call on for that kind of stuff. And it's not too late to make those decisions. You know, that it's, you know, if there's any time that it's required, it's now. So thank you. Good one, Rob. So I'll hand over to Matt now. I know it's a little bit backwards on what we were talking about, or how we were planning on playing this, but I think this has worked out quite well because Ed's mentioned about the spring. It's getting ready for the turnaround. Ties in with what Rob said. And Matt, it's, I guess with what you do with Tradie Web Guys and with digital marketing and knowing where you're heading with your business with marketing, now's a good time to be looking at what those opportunities are and how to structure the business or how to structure the messaging to get it out there to get ready for the turnaround. What are you seeing, mate?
Yeah.
Got a new light there too, mate.
Say again?
You got a new light there as well.
Yeah, I did. I turned it on for you. I think primarily it's important, and I know Ed touched on this, and I mean, obviously people showing up to, an event like this is a bit of a testament to the fact that it's really important in these times to have the right people in your corner. And, you know, I've literally just got off chat with, you know, a couple of guys on Facebook, and they're sending me all these articles and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like most of these things that you're reading are unqualified. And everything that I've pretty much read on Facebook over the last 2 days has been regurgitated by someone trying to be an expert on something that someone else has written. And it's a complete load of horse shit. And so I think it's really important primarily that as business owners and as responsible adults, which is ironic that I'm saying this, I think it is important that you do take a seat and you do take a breath, and instead of reacting to everything, you respond and you go and look for, you know, the data, as Rob was saying, because of course, you know, we're reading all this stuff, and I'm in I'm in two minds. I'm torn between this situation at the moment because I've got, you know, the bad devil on this shoulder telling me, oh my God, it's doom and gloom. We're all going to die, blah, blah, business is finished. And then I got on this shoulder, I've got all of my clients, seriously, most of them saying, this is amazing. We're busier than we've ever been. Everyone's been sent home from work. They're all working from home now. Toilets are blocking more. Lights are going out more. They're getting more call outs. Like, we've had an electrician out here today fixing light sockets because so, I mean, and obviously I know it's early days, and I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes and say that, you know, or in any way whatsoever, to sort of downplay the severity of the situation. But I think, you know, as responsible adults and as business owners, you need to sit back and actually assess the situation for what it is and how it's going to affect you. What Rob was saying about forecasting, super important. You know, like understanding your numbers. And I know a lot of guys out there, when we speak to, you know, hundreds of business owners from all over the planet, and, you know, understanding your finances is paramount. A lot of guys don't have a grasp on that. And
it's not that hard. It's not hard when you've got the right tools.
Exactly. You plug Xero in, and I've said this a million times on the podcast, like, I am not the numbers guy. I never have been. I probably never will be. But I was one of those dudes that used to stick my head in the sand and, you know, just not want to know about anything to do with the finance of the business because it was too scary. And now I love it. Now it's part of my weekly routine. And it's every Friday every Monday I sit down, I do my accounting and I do my reconciliation, I do all this kind of stuff. And I know exactly, I check my profit and loss. I know exactly where the business is at every single week. And I mean, I learned that was taught to me by people such as yourselves, you know, how to do those kind of things. But not everybody's had that experience. But I encourage you guys, as Clinton was saying, now's the time to go and find those people and find those, you know, experts that can help you and equip you with those sort of things. You know, there's some amazing tools and amazing resources and people and, you know, networks out there, but it's about cutting through the bullshit and getting the right people in your corner, which is really important at this time. So in terms of the analogy that Ed was using with the spring, and I think it's actually a really good one, because obviously, you know, coming into these times, we all know we need to sort of be conscious of what we're spending on, you know, cutting costs, so on and so forth. what my experience has been so far throughout this ordeal is that, and to be fair, my opinion on this may be somewhat biased because the businesses that we speak to are, I feel like I'm kind of preaching to the choir a lot of the time. Like the guys that listen to the podcast, they're savvy business owners. They love to learn. They love to take in knowledge. They're always willing to adapt and, improve their businesses to whatever level. So I kind of feel like maybe my perception on what's going on, the businesses that I speak with, maybe a little bit jaded to, the majority. But regardless, this is probably a testament to the fact that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of positivity out there in what's to come. And you're talking about the analogy of the spring, and I hadn't heard that, but it's actually it's pretty true. Like I can tell you right now with 100% clarity, and you can quote me on this, and you can hang me up and shoot me if I'm wrong. But the businesses that emerge from this in the wake of what we're seeing, this pandemic, emerge stronger are going to be the businesses that have, throughout this process, they've gone and they've implemented systems, they've implemented policy, they've implemented process, they've cut back on unnecessary expenses, which, yes, may be some stuff. They might have implemented one cloud technology, which has reduced the need to have somebody sitting in an office, and then it's also reduced the fact they need to have the office. So now they can operate a remote business through using software. And this is conversations, Clinton, that I know you and I have had for a millennium with our audiences about how you can implement technology to help streamline your business and reduce overheads, so on and so forth. And until something like this happens, sadly, people sort of they give you the argument, I don't have time. I'd love to, but I don't have time. Oh, this works really well.
It wouldn't work for me.
It wouldn't work. You don't understand my business. My business is different. So, but now all of a sudden people are saying, well, hang on, maybe I do want to listen to this because I can tell you right now, and I'm sure the semantics of this global event are different, but it's still a global event. We've been through other global events before. Sure, maybe not, specifically this, but businesses emerge from these things with prosperity and force. And it's the ones that actually think proactively, try and get themselves out of the victim mindset and into the possibility mindset as quickly as possible. They're typically the ones that will emerge strong. And we see it. Like I was surprised in last week, in 2 days, we had 2 clients call up and want to increase their marketing budget because their competitors have pulled marketing budget. And just to give hope to you guys out there, like this is what the competition is doing. And sure, we might be forced into a situation soon where lockdown's going to happen and that may change. But the point is, there are people out there thinking positively about, the opportunity at hand here. And, it's going to be hard, sure. And it's going to be, but a lot of that struggle is going to be due to the fact that you're going to have to learn to do something differently. And that's the big struggle, because a lot of guys have been so stuck in their ways for so long, and now they're going to be forced to have to learn to conduct the business the way they've been doing things in a different manner. And that's not a bad thing. By no means is that a bad thing, but it does mean you're going to have to learn to do something new.
I don't know about you, Jonesy, but I'm hearing on my front with some of our clients are like, I kind of can't wait for this lockdown to happen because that's going to give me 2 weeks to actually catch up on all the things that are sitting on my desk and all those estimates and quotes and all the systems and processes. And this is the message that we're sending to our clients is if we go to lockdown, and the reality is every business has a lockdown over Christmas every year for 2 weeks. It's called Christmas shutdown. But the difference this time is the government's paying you to have a lockdown. And whereas over Christmas, no work gets done. Most people are on holidays and you still got to pay annual leave. So if we can have that difference in mindset to see that we do this every year, this time we've got 2 or 3, but even if a lockdown does or doesn't happen in the construction industry, how good is it to have 2 to 3 weeks where you're going to be able to catch up on invoices, systems, processes. You're going to be able to look at your finances, forward order your schedule. You're going to be able to look at job costing through your job management system. Like, how good's it going to be? It's going to be great, isn't it?
It is. It's and this is a testament, right? Like crisis breeds opportunity. And, you know, over and over again, we've seen this throughout time, and we will see it again, mark my word. So it's, you know, it's like you said, Rob, okay, sure, this bad stuff's happening, but how can I use this to my advantage? Imagine having 2 weeks where you can be forced to work on your business. I mean, that's like the dream of every business owner.
Yeah.
Again, the semantics around it are a little bit jaded, but the reality is, you know, you can lock yourself in your office at home and you can actually get some shit done. Whereas up until now, you've been complaining about not having time to do it. Now you've got the time to do it.
Yeah. So it's about making the most of it. And I think you mentioned as well, Jonesy, before about being positive about this mental mindset and mental health is so critical in situations like this. It's easy to get dragged down into it all. And I mean, looking at the feeds, the Facebook feeds and Instagram, there's lots of memes that are going around out there. So it is easy to laugh. Like there's a lot of really lighthearted stuff out there. I've got a few examples I'm going to bring up in a minute, but does anyone have any stress relief? I'll switch to gallery view. Anyone got any stress relief tactics that you're using to kind of lighten the mood?
100%. So I have actually started, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Wim Hof.
Yeah.
So he basically, he's a maniac actually. He's a bit of a sociopath. He's basically got these breathing methods, and the whole thing is about reducing stress. He's the guy, they call him the Iceman. He's the guy who swims under slabs of ice and, you know, throughout the Antarctic and all this kind of crazy stuff. But the breathing methods are there to help you control your stress level. And then it also, he basically gets you taking things like daily cold showers, like ice cold showers, you know. And the whole point of it is to help you manage stress better. If anyone's curious, Wim Hof, WIMHOFF, there's a free app actually, and the app is brilliant. And I've actually just started using it. It gives you like a calendar setup. I should get a commission for this.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I love it. I love a good app, Jonesy.
Wim Hof method, and it helps you. And you can gamify it. You can track your, you can track your breathing performance. You can track your cold shower performance. Like it's just a bit of fun. And then as well, like just getting out there and doing training. Like, you know, yeah, we're forced into lockdown, but it's amazing the amount of stuff you can do at home.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to be in the gym. So, you know, there's a lot of things you can do out there. It's been working great for me.
I think a lot of people though will use this. Oh, the gym's closed. I'm not going to go training. But that's the worst thing you can do in situations like this. It'll absolutely affect your mental health. And totally. just going to ground is the worst thing you can do.
One thing I have been doing though is like when I go up to the outdoor gym, which is up the road here, is like bars and that kind of stuff. I just take some metho and I just wipe the bars down. And just use a bit of common sense. Something I would never have done before. I'm doing now. So.
Good one. Good tip. Anyone else? Ed, what are you doing?
I do. I've always done this, or try to do it at least. I'm going to present to you guys as though I always remain calm. I'm not sure I do, but if I find myself slipping into being a bit of a victim, as Matt says, I try quickly to imagine myself as to what I'm going to think of that situation when I'm 50. Believe it or not, I'm not actually 50 already. If I look like it, but after these few days, I probably do. But no, I imagine like what would my 50-year-old self think of this situation? And I reckon my 50-year-old self is going to look back at this time and actually say, I learned a lot during that time. I really learned a lot. That was a time in my business life where I was tested, I was challenged, I was really taken to the edge. But I learned a lot. And if I think like that, then I tend to get back into a bit more of an adult mindset rather than any drama or catastrophe.
Awesome. I think as well, a lot of those mindset issues that we're having are because of the shit that we're reading. Yeah. And like, they're not the experiences we're having, it's the shit we're reading. And I think fundamentally, I mean, I'm not saying don't disregard everything you read, but like attack it with a bit of common sense. Okay. Like, don't stop training, just go and train. And as I say, take some methylated spirits and wipe shit down before you touch it or before you use it, and then clean your hands after, you know, like all those fears that we're taking on board now, they're fabricated either by ourselves or by other people that have created shit that we've gone ahead and consumed.
There is some good stuff out there though.
there is, don't get me wrong, but as I was saying before,
it's pretty cheap too, by the way.
It is, yeah. It's a bargain, isn't it? Yeah.
Classic. Yeah, no, that's a good one.
That's the best one.
Angus,
I had that conversation the other day with someone. They're like, oh, I was sitting away working away, and I had the radio on in the background all day long, and it's like, dude, you're just filling your mind with so much negativity, and I think that's where it's really important that we absolutely nurture our mindset right now, and let's not be blasé around that we think it's not going to affect us, because it's absolutely affecting everyone in some way or form. But we lead with our mindset, and if we've got the ability to be able to nurture that, that's where you can listen to Matt's podcasts or listen to other podcasts or read good books. And now's your opportunity to sharpen the saw when it comes to your finances or marketing or sales or how to be a better leader. And the question that I keep asking myself is, how is this serving me? Like, how is this calling me to be a better leader? And if I can start balancing my mindset from focusing on the negative to thinking, well, what's the benefit in all this? And how is this going to make me a better person, a better leader, a better business coach, a better husband, better father? Then it's calling me to a higher place. And I think that's what this situation is doing. It's going to separate the men from the boys, so to speak, and it's going to call those who are prepared to step up and play a bigger game, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Any tips, Angus?
Just from me,
pretty dark there.
Yeah, I turned off my camera just because it was getting a little bit dark. But yeah, just some really great advice from everybody. I've learned a lot from this discussion, so thank you for that. But from my perspective, I think it's really important to make sure that you're looking after yourself. That spring analogy is a really, really good one, but I think it goes another way, that you need to be able to control when it does release itself as well. There's a lot of candle burning happening at two ends. And that can sometimes have an impact on life in other areas. So just worth keeping an eye on it. For me personally, I just need to make sure that I continue to eat well, to exercise as I sort of would otherwise, but also make sure that you're keeping up connections. Tools like this, tools like Skype, FaceTime, all of that sort of stuff is really important to maintain that human connection. But also, pick something up that's really productive. And I think something that we've had a little chat about here as well is learning new tools, figuring out where are the opportunities, taking this time to be like, well, now I've got the time. It's something that people say all the time. I don't have the time in my day to actually implement the tools, which is going to make me more productive as a business. But now here it is. So looking at it through a lens of positivity, I think is really, really important. And staying away from the wall-to-wall negative news coverage for sure, because that's a real dark hole, that one.
I reckon, Angus, as well, we watched you burn about 500 calories swatting flies.
I know. Nathan was saying that I was flicking my hair back, but it certainly wasn't that.
I think something you're important to remember as well is making sure we stay connected with their families. I think that's really important. Like Matt and I have got young babies a similar age. Like my little girl Grace, she's almost 1, and unfortunately we're not having a first birthday for her. But it's like she's so happy and she's so oblivious to what's going on now. She doesn't understand. But she's so happy, she's laughing, and that there just brings joy to me. And we're in such a stressful environment, and I think now is more than ever that we stay connected with our friends, we stay connected with our families, because I'm concerned about what isolation is going to do to society on a bigger scale around depression and mental health, and the impact that what's the flow-on effect with people who can't train and go to the gym, and what's the flow-on effect that's going to happen that we'll see in 6 or 12 months' time. But I think today, a lot of people are under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, and they are burning the candle at both ends, like you said, Angus. And it's so important that we remain connected with our families in this time, so that that doesn't fall over, along with a lot of businesses as well.
I think that's a very real risk that we need to all be aware of. They'll say that the disease will kill a lot of people, but the flow-on effect of the depression, economic depression and mental depression will potentially kill a lot more people. So it's something we all have to be very, very aware of.
But a lot of, we can't lose of sight as one of the biggest causes of relationship breakdowns is money, and the arguing over money, and where this is a health issue that's turning into an economic issue. And then once it becomes an economic issue, there's going to be business people who hurt financially, which is then going to flow into the family dynamics. And so we've got to be connected to those people who are important to us, because we don't want this financial situation to not only people to lose their business and their jobs, but they lose their family as well, and because as a result of arguing over money, for example.
Communication again, so key. Okay, very conscious of time. We've gone 15 minutes over already. There's a few questions that I wanted to address and answer. We'll start with, so I had a few come through over email before we kicked off today. There was a question about how do you apply for the apprentice subsidy and when. So I'll just show my screen, because this is a little bit of a grey area. And on the employment.gov.au website, there is, I'll put this link into the chat box, but there's information there about the government supporting small businesses to retain their apprentices and trainees. Employers can register for the subsidy from the 2nd of April, and final claims for payment must be lodged by the 31st of December. So the apprentice or trainee must have been in training with a small business as at the 1st of March, but it can be backdated to the 1st of January. It's important that you apply. You have to register for the subsidy. Further information is available from the Australian Apprenticeship Support Network providers. So I guess whoever you've coordinated with to engage your apprentices is probably your best point of contact. They'd be getting a lot of these questions. So I'll put that link into the chat box. Anyone got anything to say about that? Anyone across or had discussions around that particular item?
I think tying back to what Ed was saying before about situations where like now you're being in like from a positive perspective, okay, there might be a lot more people available for you to bring into your team, and apprentices are one of them. And I know certainly, like we've had a couple of these conversations in the group of late. Some of these incentives are quite appealing to bring on an apprentice, and I think it's a good opportunity. Like Rob was saying, like looking beyond and looking sort of in the wake of what we're going through at the minute, which is it will happen. It has to happen eventually. Having that team structure and having apprentices that you can sort of mold and train and all that kind of thing, which you may not have been able to get access to, and potentially you're getting people here that have got some prior training. Like that's often quite a big incentive when you're trying to hire an apprentice. So there are serendipities.
And off the back of that that discussion, Dave's mentioned if TAFEs close, how can they be in training? But I guess the training date, they must have been in training with a small business as at the 1st of March, which is before all of this stuff really kicked off. So as long as they were with your business and I guess signed up as an apprentice with you before the 1st of March, you should be right. Next question was, how will the 50% business activity statement credit work? Will you have to lodge and pay, then get a credit to your account with the ATO, or will you get actual cash back? We answered that one earlier. So it's based on the BAS and IAS submissions, and it will be a credit. It's a credit. It's not cash that's actually paid out to you. Next question was around, does the business loan help apply to business vehicle loans? So there's some discussion out there around, or some support there for business loans. And ultimately it's down to your lender, whoever you bank with. So whoever you bank with, comes back to communication, give them a ring, reach out to them. We bank with ANZ, and the ANZ had an online form that I was able to fill out to apply for loan repayments and that kind for holidays on loan repayments and that kind of stuff. So it will vary lender to lender, but ultimately the government is securing or guaranteeing 50% of some of the business loans out there. But again, contact your bank, but also contact your advisor, your financial advisor that you're working with. And the last question, superannuation definitely needs to be paid on time. No exceptions, ? Absolutely. Superannuation is not affected by any of these stimulus packages. That is an obligation that we have to pay as an employer. we have to pay superannuation because that's not our money. That belongs to our employees. So yes, it has to be paid on time, no exceptions.
And even all the lodgements still need to be on time with IAS and BAS and everything like that. From what I understand, is that all still has to be on time and in full. It's just the concessions are made appropriately. So
yes, but there on that point there are options to contact the ATO to talk to them about your the payments, and I think thinking about that, going on to a repayment plan for whatever your tax debt might be is definitely an option. The ATO is very open to discussing that. Again, it comes back to communication. The ATO is great as long as you communicate with them. If you call them and you explain the situation and you're very transparent with them and you keep communicating with them, they will support you. They don't want to put you out of business, especially in a situation like this. So it just comes down to making that call, whether it's you calling them as the business owner or it's your financial advisor as your accountant or your bookkeeper making the call on your behalf. As long as you're communicating, that's what is absolutely important. So that can be a great, they're talking about interest-free repayments when you're going onto a payment plan with the ATO. I don't know 100% about that, but there is definitely the option to defer payment and go on to payment plans. So you definitely utilize that tool.
As far as I know, it's always been interest-free with the ATO.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I think, and this raises another point, guys. If you're getting stressed over things like tax, that's the last thing you should be worrying about right now. I mean, there's a million other things you should be focusing your attention on. The ATO, as Clinton said, is actually quite responsive if you just speak to them, and they're especially in this environment. As long as you communicate what the issue is, the payment plans are actually fantastic. I've been on payment plans in the past, and not even because I really needed to, just because I wanted to manage cash flow a bit better. And it's literally like a interest-free loan, which you can really work in your favour. So it is a good resource.
Awesome.
Sorry to
Angus,
jump in. I'm just going to have to jump off. But thank you very much for having me. And anything else that I can help with, feel free to reach out at any time.
Thank you, Angus. Sorry we weren't long, mate. I kind of knew this was going to happen. There's so much to discuss. Safe travels.
Thank you. I'll chat to you soon. Bye.
Cheers. So the last two questions, we're nearly done. A couple more minutes. These ones might be for you, Ed, if you're still there. So this one's been on the Q&A list for a little while. Small installation company in the shop fitting and office fit out industry. I have a couple of subcontractors and one apprentice. If I take the government payments, I can afford to keep on the apprentice even without work, but I won't have an income myself. Can I receive Centrelink payments as the business owner? So my understanding is that as a business owner, if there is a decline in income for the business, then the business owner may be entitled to get some benefits. Is that right? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it depends on the structure of the business. So sole traders, I know, were specifically called out as being able to do that.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know the answer as a business owner, but ultimately, if you're employed by the entity, my frank advice would be give it a go. I don't know the answer. I should stress to that. I'm just looking at a couple of queries here as well, where people are saying, can so and so get New Start if I give them agreed leave without pay? And my advice is, look, we're in a fast-moving world. Go and try it, and if it doesn't happen, then you can readjust and change your strategy. But so in this case, I'd say give it a go. If you're employed by your own company, you're an employee, as I am here, then go and give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think the important point is set a little bit of time aside to do that, because there are some serious wait times for things like ATO and things like Centrelink. So set a little bit of time aside for it, but it's worth doing. If it's saving some money, and it's potentially going to save the business. And last question. So shutting down as a result of downturn in business from this whole crisis is enough reason to stand people down? ? I was under the impression that only if the government shut you down, you could stand people down. But apparently if you close because of all of this, you can stand them down with leave without pay ?
So again, my warning sign, be careful with the language stand down. The person asking the question there is spot on. Stand down is only available if government shuts you down. It's a very technical thing. It's not just a way of putting your employees on leave without pay. Leave without pay is different, and you need to agree that with the employee.
But if we're in this situation where we go into lockdown and all the construction sites across the country are shut down and can't be accessed apart from those that are essential, regarded as essential workers, then that will be a situation for stand down.
It will be. There's still one extra small hurdle, which is you need to meet with the employee and talk about whether there's any other work that they could be reasonably deployed to do. So just hearing, I think Matt was talking about doing, for example, cleaning equipment, cleaning vans and so on. Is there work that they can be reasonably deployed to do? And if the answer is no, you don't need that work doing at this time, then yes, you go ahead, stand down. But I'd urge everyone to record that in writing as well. Don't just have that in a conversation. Make sure that you do a follow-up email or letter explaining what's happened and why you think that is a stand down situation in this case, because the government has done a lockdown which has had consequent effects on your business, which means there's been a stoppage of work, not a reduction in work.
So following on from that, how has Qantas and Virgin been able to stand people down if they haven't been shut down by the government? But the government did impose some travel restrictions.
It's partly that, but also they're working under enterprise agreements, which I don't know the content, but the belief is that those enterprise agreements had clauses in them which allowed them to stand down in situations that were short of a total stoppage.
Right. I was looking at an enterprise agreement earlier today with one of the guys that I do a bit of work with, and he has an agreement in place that says if there's a work shutdown that's out of your control. So similar kind of situation.
Exactly. So it might be similar language to the Fair Work Act, but slightly broader. I suppose to stress, I've obviously got the best interests of the employer at heart here. I'm not trying to stop people from doing stand downs. I just really don't want to see a whole world of claims where unemployed people in the future are saying, you didn't actually have the right to stand me down. You should have carried on paying me, so I'm going to sue you.
Yep, awesome. Okay, and I've just brought up on the screen the Employsure website. You guys have some really good content and information on the website about the situation and some really good really good stuff that people can access and have a look at. So I've been showing a lot of websites tonight, a lot of pages tonight, and the majority of the things that I'm looking at are government or trusted. They've got to be a trusted source of information. Like Jonesy was saying, there's a lot of bullshit that's out there. So it's being able to filter through that, and primarily, my main source is going to the government sites and seeing what they have available. So we're half an hour over time, but that's been awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm sorry to keep you so late, and thank you for everybody that's attended. We've pretty much got everybody that joined us at the start with us now. So we must have been saying the right stuff. So thank you, everybody. Best wishes. If there are any other questions from anybody. Oh, there is one more question. I have a cleaning company. I can't get PPE, so I can't send my staff to work. I have work coming in, but we can't do it due to OH&S. My business was printing money last year. Then we had to fire. We had the drought, and now this. I've made a loss since January. Where do I stand? So the PPE piece, that's tricky.
So there's a bit of employment and health and safety there, which is that if there's a health and safety practice for them to have particular PPE, then you can't just plough on and do the work. You'll be potentially breaching your safe system of work. If those employees then got injured or ill as a consequence, then you'd potentially have a health and safety violation on your hands. So be careful with that. on a practical level, I'd be scrounging everywhere I could for PPE. Even speaking to competitors, you'd be surprised at how collaborative people are at the moment about just trying to help each other out when they might have tried to undermine each other before.
Comes down to your duties and obligations as an owner, doesn't it? I know that we've got a client at the moment who's in the health space. It's a little bit left field for one of our clients, client base, but he's having to stand his whole business down and put it on mothballs because he doesn't have appropriate PPE to be able to continue to be able to ensure that he can ensure that he's looking after his team members. So I think it's great advice there, Ed, that if you go and talk to your competitors in times like this, people are willing to be able to help out in these times. So I think it's about grabbing as much PPE as you can in this time and just pausing what you can, but not recklessly putting your team members in unsafe environments, because it's almost a bit negligent in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I like what you said. I think going out there to the community and saying, this is the situation I'm in and this is what I'm looking for. Facebook groups and business groups and business networks. If a business is shut down and they've got all of this stuff in their warehouse, they might want to move it on. They might make a little bit of money out of it. They might give it to you. Who knows? It's worth asking the question. It just comes down to communication. And Glenn put a comment into the Q&A. You can get hand sanitizer from that particular website. I don't know what that website is. It might be a bit dodgy, but anyway, it's
something Ruth might be able to consider. And Clinton, I'm not sure. I know you want to wrap up, but this is where it's an opportunity where you can retain the customer. You might be able to subcontract work to another competitor, so that instead of saying no, I can't do that work, because the moment you say no, that customer is going to go to someone else. And for everyone who's sticking around, this is how you're going to thrive at the back end of this, because if you can provide a great service, if you can go over and above, if you can communicate to your customers that you're still open and that you're demonstrating that you're open for business when everyone else is contracting in their mindset, that's those businesses who are going to thrive at the back end and spring out of this. So for Ruth's case, is if she can hold that contract with that customer, subcontract that to another cleaning company, and the money comes in through Ruth and then pays that out to the subcontractor and have the relevant subcontractor agreements in place, then this is the ability to be able to retain the customer, get the work done, but still make a clip on the way through margin.
And potentially build a really solid relationship for the future,
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Late night, you can all go to bed now.
Request that those links get sent out in an email to all the attendees and panelists.
100%. So I'll put all the links. I'll put all the links into an email that'll go out as a follow-up, along with the recording of the session. I think we're putting the recording up, but it definitely will have all the links, and we'll put those into Facebook as well as a list of all of those links, because there's some really, really good content there. So thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for inviting us, mate.
Cheers. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.